It's incredible technically in a lot of ways. It's incredible emotionally. It's beautiful music, but it puts forth a way of looking at the world that I find very interesting. That this uniquely crazy way of making music and structuring and thinking about sound and what sound could be.
I remember watching a program, I think it was in the UK, a BBC program maybe, and I don't know if it's exactly Krautrock, but it was a program that had Kraftwerk, and particularly the early days of Kraftwerk. And so that you had these guys with long hair in a kind of garage somewhere, and they had all these instruments and lots of wires everywhere. I mean, you could tell there was anger in their music, but there was also quite graceful at the same time as angry and like looking for freedom or something.
Es ist so ein Gefühl, dass die damals unterwegs waren, musst du ja überlegen, aus welcher Generation kommen die. Das sind alles Kriegskinder, die haben alle die Nazis miterlebt, die sind noch aus der Generation, wo traue keinem über 30 was gemeint hat, weil die über 30 waren, hatten irgendwas damit zu tun oder hatten eine Position damals. Und ich glaube, darauf fußt es, dass sich Krautrock dass die deutsche Musikintelligenzia sich neu konstituiert hat.
It was a big shock for me, this music, because it was nothing I heard like that before. So I guess my taste with electronic came from Kraftwerk first. Then later on I discovered other bands, and also later I noticed on some records it was already this guy called Conny, and I tried to find out more, but in those days we had no internet, so but any record I found with Conny name, I bought it. It was the designs, the atmosphere, it was also like my parents didn't like that, they thought it was really eerie and very, very cold, but I sort of discovered it on my own from the radio once. I heard one song, I think it was Radioactivity, and from that I discovered it was a whole scene.
Krautrock war für mich nie Krautrock, sondern es war die Musik, die zu Hause lief, und es war nichts Besonderes, sondern es war halt die Hintergrundmusik meiner Jugend. Das, was ich erlebe als Krautrock, wenn du so sagen willst, Familienmitglied, ist ganz faszinierend. Es gibt so eine Neugier von den Menschen auf die Zeit und wie es gekommen ist, dass sich damals die Musik geändert hat in Deutschland und wie aus Deutschland eine ganz neue Musikbewegung hervorgegangen ist.
I don't think like many of the Krautrock bands really sounded like each other at all. Like they were all kind of very disparate. So
yeah, and obviously the ethos of the music that's being made in comparison with the ethos of why kind of people started doing things like Return to Krautrock is so completely different. It's like it's kind of I don't know. It's just like an aesthetic rather than any like overall motivation.
What is life? The silence. Sounds like the same like the emptiness. To the time lost.
Damals haben wir mit Orgeln und mit Pauken und Trompeten sozusagen gearbeitet und mit verzerrten Geräten. Verzerrer gab es damals auch schon. Und wir haben eben versucht, sämtliche Töne zu verfremden. Das war eigentlich unser größter Wunsch von Musikinstrumenten, die eigentlich normalerweise völlig anders klingen. Und das möglichst laut.
Also Maschinen können keinen Krautrock, das ist klar. Das wollen die auch gar nicht. Nein, es geht um so eine Freiheit, glaube ich, ging es immer. Um so eine wahnsinnige Freiheit. Also in der Zeit, wo das entstanden ist, so mit Kähnen und das, was man so typisch Krautrock nennt oder Embryo oder was es alles gab, was auch zum Teil, also auch Cluster, Dieter heute dabei ist, da kann man wahrscheinlich auch mehr dazu sagen, aber es hat auch sehr viel mit so einer so Kommunenideen noch zu tun und sich einfach so befreien von amerikanischer Musik auch vor allem, ne? Und so befreien von dem ganzen deutschen Mief und so. Ne?
It's just amazing to hear all of the different panorama of sounds that came out of this incredibly fertile time in Germany. And we're still kind of contending with it and trying to understand it. It's still a mystery in a way. As much as we learn about it, it was like, how did this music happen? And Conny Plank was this driving force, this sort of spiritual glue that bound together all of these different bands.
He wasn't too much hands-on. He wasn't a hands-on producer. He would get the idea out of the musician without telling them what they have to do. He would give them a comfortable surrounding and say, everything is all right, just let it out and we see what happens. And by this he gave them the possibility to release their material to the world without forcing them and without giving them straight lines. You have to be in this boundaries to work with me or something like this. He would just say, let it flow and then we see what happens and what we can do with it.
It wasn't like this ego where he had to make everything sound like Conny. It was like he helped the bands sound like themselves. But then in another way, you can also feel, you can palpably, sort of feel this Conny Plank spirit in the album.
Conny Plank, so diese Krautrock-Umfeld, das war vielleicht ein Drittel oder so von seines Schaffens.
Ja, da auch nur die Anfänge. Weil es hat viel mehr mit so einer sehr energetischen elektronischen Musik zu tun auch. Ne? Oder Industrial oder so. Und da hat er ja so ganz viel so die Wege geleitet, was so Produktionsarten angeht. Und Produktionsformen, die so sehr ja, vielleicht anders waren. Er hat auch Eurythmics gemacht und Ultravox und alles Mögliche. Das darf man einfach nicht vergessen.
I'm talking about a time when he was working in studios, and he war angestellt. He was employed in these studios. And he had not the possibility to choose what he will record. So he didn't choose us, but he didn't choose a lot of other people that he was working on. And when we talk about Conny, he record German Schlager music as well, and he didn't want to do it, but he had to do it because he was an employee in these studios.
There's a lot of mystery around Conny, in part because he's not alive anymore, but also just in terms of his mode of operation. He was never the kind of guy who was really like kind of flashy and all about himself. You know, one of the interesting things about producers is they're sort of in the background. It's like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, you know? And so there aren't tons of interviews with him. There aren't, like, he's not in the spotlight that much. And yet his fingerprints are all over everything. His ways of thinking about the mixing console, of conceptualizing the recording studio, of ways of thinking about sound, about what could be a sound and how to organize sound.
Some of this inventing stuff as one part of him being a producer and a technician, he was making some sounds possible. You have to think back in time, in the early 80s, MIDI was just about to come around, and they had really massive problems synchronizing stuff. And as he was a schooled electrician as well, he could figure something out to make it sync. So I found tons of these boxes which he made just for one synthesizer to speak to the other, and it's a MIDI plug here and a MIDI plug there, and in between he had figured something out so they would communicate together and it wouldn't go out of tune.
I guess if he was still around, he would like this German scene, for example. But I guess he found that because before he died, it was still happening. Like Andreas Dorau, I mean, in the 80s, like this second German, the Deutsche Welle.
This music really lives on. I mean, these records are all getting reissued and whatever, but beyond that, I mean, this music is pretty timeless music, and it's just incredible music.
I think it was extremely marginal movement, which now is echoing with the distance, because maybe we've lost our sense of direction, we don't know where we're going, we've lost sense of our political grounding, so we revert to this kind of thing for a sense of direction and meaning around what we do as artists, you know, or what we do as a society at large. So I think there is a resonance, you know, from that time and what they were doing to now, and it's meaningful.
Ich glaube, Krautrock zeigt, dass man sich nicht in ein Korsett schnallen lassen muss, um Musik zu machen. Und nicht, nein, ich mache jetzt diesen Krautrock oder ich mache diese Popmusik. Krautrock beschreibt eher, dass man frei neu erfindet und Assoziationen zusammenspielt. Dass das heute schon ein politisches Statement ist, finde ich fast beunruhigend.
I think Krautrock is a good name because it says it all, and it's like a joke. It doesn't sound serious, but it's extremely, like sauerkraut, very healthy and important food. So I guess for the music, it's not such a bad name to have picked it up.
Woher auch dieser Krautrock-Begriff herkommt, dass eben während der im 18. oder 19. Jahrhundert, dass die englischen Seefahrer, die haben Zitronen mitgenommen, deswegen wurden die ja Limey genannt von den deutschen Seefahrern und die deutschen Seefahrer hatten eben Sauerkraut dabei, deswegen haben die Engländer die Deutschen dann Grouts genannt. So. Und daher kommt das eigentlich, diese Begrifflichkeit.
Aber es ist ein unglaublich flexibler Begriff eigentlich, der so eigentlich die Offenheit beschreibt, mit der nicht nur deutsche Musiker, sondern vielleicht alle möglichen Musiker auf der ganzen Welt versuchen, so unterschiedlichste Stilrichtungen zusammenzubringen und das kann man dann, wenn man möchte, sehr schnell mal Krautrock nennen, aber es muss nicht sein, finde ich.
It's come to signify something, for better or for worse, and I think there would probably not have, without Conny, a lot of this music might not have existed.